What if all food disappears from the earth? Walking the aisles of our local supermarkets, we often find ourselves discontented. Of course, the shelves are laden with an abundance of food. But in one store, the supposedly live fish looks as if they've fallen into a near-death coma. And in another, the so-called baby veal looks older than my grandmother's feet. But what if one day you enter the store and find nothing? No, the shelves still remain in their places. But what if there weren't any products? What if, in fact, the whole world was left without food? The situation at first seems to be an absurd one, but only at first glance. In fact, some believe that something like this may occur in the very near future. According to the latest UN report, there's an ever-increasing lack of food in the world every year. At this rate, by 2020, worldwide hunger will arrive. This unfortunate situation has already been declared in southern Sudan, and Yemen, Nigeria, and Somalia are on the way. And according to the conclusion of a group of Australian scientists, every 10th inhabitant of the planet now suffers from a shortage of food. And in 10 years, every 5th person on the Earth will begin to be malnourished. Researchers believe the main cause of this food crisis is man himself, or rather, the innumerable and increasing quantity of us. We like to call ourselves reasonable, and yet we continue to procreate like rabbits. In 1974, the authors of one of the global models, Mihailo Mesarovic and Edward Pastel, wrote, "The world is sick with cancer, and this cancer is us." According to these scientists' forecast, by 2020, the world population will hit 8 billion. Nature will be inundated with people, with us humans jammed together like sardines in a can, and the entire ecosystem will burst under the resulting pressure. Additionally, according to climatologists, human activity will soon lead to a temperature increase of 2.4 degrees on average. And due to this, agricultural efficiency will dramatically decrease. The resultant reduction in crop yields, it is said, will contribute to environmental pollution. For example, right now, about 75% of the water and land surface of India is already crawling with toxic waste, as the 1.3 billion inhabitants of this country are not used to adhering to contemporary norms of hygiene. Take the Ganges River, for example, which is considered to be sacred. Indians use it for drinking, washing clothes, for relieving themselves, and even for funeral rites and the accompanying disposal of the bodies. According to a UN report, many more people have access to mobile phones in India than to toilets. But this deterioration of the environment will not only occur in poor countries. In the US, in order to solve a utilization matter, an incredible amount of chicken droppings is fed to cattle. So perhaps instead of juicy steaks, what the inhabitants of Kansas or Iowa are really savoring is bunches of dung. But what if it doesn't work out this way? What if this is all wrong? Perhaps the power players of the world would like us to believe in ever-rising prices for all food products and the campfire story about world hunger that will quietly bring them enormous profits. This contrarian view belongs to the famous English biologist and writer Matt Ridley. The author writes that, in fact, progress does not lead to Earth's resources running low. Let's take, for example, water, which is necessary for food production. In the year 2000, the world used half as much as experts of the 1960s assumed we would. The savings of this lifeblood of agriculture were achieved by using more effective irrigation techniques and applying new methods of water desalination. And in the near future, in order to save water in general, people will start to produce water from even such things as feces, solving a large issue of waste disposal at the same time. In fact, this technique is already in use. Apparently, this water is quite tasty, and even the famous computer billionaire Bill Gates is not against drinking it. There is, in fact, more than enough energy to produce the food we need. After the invention and perfection of the technology of hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, and its use in shale oil production, gas and oil have ceased to be more expensive than gold. And over time, scientists will more than likely invent new ways to use solar energy more effectively, or they may offer us something else entirely. Scientists will certainly find new, better, ultra-efficient ways to produce food. It's also possible that such products might be quite unusual. For example, according to Minnesota University staff, the meat of small cattle might replace our customary beef. What do we mean by small cattle, you may ask? That would be insects rich in protein and other healthy, nourishing substances. A herd of 1 million little such bugs or grasshoppers could be housed on a territory of just 1 single square meter. Alternative seafood, namely jellyfish, would come to be widely used. The seas and oceans are full of them. These creatures are highly caloric. And jellyfish give dishes a fabulous appearance. Some even glow in the dark. What could be more beautiful during a romantic evening than a cocktail glass shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow? Beautiful, yes, but alas, disgusting. Once you remember that it's a jellyfish. Or for that matter, seeing a plate full of bugs would likely quickly spoil your appetite. However, perhaps people won't need to eat such unusual foods. For example, scientists are hoping to provide the world tasty, delicious meat grown in vats from the stem cells of animals. Researchers are already producing such futuristic foodstuffs. True, they are still quite expensive. The price of one steak is about $80. But work in this direction continues apace, and scientists promise that in 5 to 10 years, test tube meat will be the cheapest in the world. And with computer technology constantly improving, things will only get better. Future computers will easily create a variety of food products on 3D printers. It will be enough to simply fill special cartridges with a minimum number of nutritional components. The creation of such food is already underway in New York at a company called Modern Meadow, having received a knowledge grant of $10 million to further advance this technology. So it turns out that people are far from going hungry. But if all these people are still around, then the original scenario becomes much worse. That is, if every edible thing on the planet suddenly disappears. This could happen as the result of an eruption of a supervolcano, or the strike of a large meteor, or even some bizarre explosion at the Large Hadron Collider. Then, as they say, the real Armageddon begins. So, what would happen? British scientists at the University of Leicester modeled the situation, and they say that having been left without anything else to eat, people would soon begin to eat, within a month, each other. This appalling step would not save the foredoomed civilization, but would only delay for a time its ultimate destruction. Scientists have established that cannibalism is horrific not only for moral and ethical reasons. It is disadvantageous from a bioenergy point of view. Animal carcasses contain far more calories than human bodies. For this reason, cannibals died out during evolution, giving way to just us regular meat eaters. Researchers have calculated that the body of one average human being contains about 125,000 calories. This is enough to provide energy for 50 people for one day. Thus, on the first cannibalistic day after the apocalypse, roughly 1/50th of humanity would perish. On the second day, another 1/50th of the survivors, and so on. At this rate, all of humanity would disappear in a mere 1,149 days. But what if that's wrong? What if suddenly, in the nearest future, normal food disappears, but at our own invitation? Humanity could literally begin to feed on a kind of Holy Spirit, as it were, although the word holy in this case is not really appropriate. Imagine when you come home that you're given a bunch of divine smells to inhale instead of a heavy supper. It would be a mixture of all the tasty smells of, for example, a turkey cooked on a grill, a meat pie with mushrooms, and a steaming coffee. Your hunger would disappear after just a few breaths. Does it sound like fantasy? it isn't. Harvard scientist David Edwards has invented a device that turns food into a vapor. Following this, Canadian chef Norman Aitken introduced a container with an ultrasonic radiator onto the menus at his restaurant. Food, usually soup, is placed into this container, which ultrasound soon turns into a cloudy vapor of food. With pleasure, one simply inhales this delicacy. Using this method, the body so effectively absorbs food that satiation follows after breathing just several milligrams of nutrients. And what do you think of this idea? To savor your favorite dishes while sleeping. American scientists, together with the U.S. Department of Defense, are preparing a food patch that supplies microelements and vitamins to the body. The nutrients are absorbed through the pores of the skin and then spread through the circulatory system throughout the body. In this case, a chip embedded in the patch reads information about a person's satiety and provides the missing elements to the body if necessary. Such a patch is simply attached to the foot at night, and you sleep more easily to boot. The smells of fresh forest raspberries, fried piglets, or something more exotic will fill your dreams. But what if the whole premise is false? A deficit of foodstuffs on the Earth in total has never happened before and likely never will. In 1679, the great Dutch naturalist Anton van Leeuwenhoek calculated that the planet could feed 13.4 billion people. And his conclusions have been confirmed by many modern studies. So why do pockets of hunger still exist in the world? It really all has to do with unequal food distribution. The situation could be compared to a ball filled with water. While nothing hinders it, the ball will keep a perfectly round shape. If one were to squeeze it, one side would immediately lose weight, as it were, and the other would bloat and could burst at any moment. In our case, the ball represents the spread of wealth and poverty, with reduced wealth and food distribution in poorer countries. As a result, food products in large amounts flow to places where people are richer. Due to this, in North America and Europe, more than 600 million people are already suffering from obesity. That is about 13% of the adult population of the planet. Residents of these regions often buy mountains of delicacies, and later they unceremoniously send the uneaten portions to the garbage heap. It is estimated that in developed countries, people throw away from 1/3 to 1/2 of all food produced. So, foodstuffs are scarcer in some places due to reduced purchasing power in those places and overconsumption in others. So then, it is only necessary to eliminate this crushing poverty in some fashion, and everything will naturally come back into balance. And our imaginary ball will again become round and smooth, to the joy of all mankind.